and French President Emmanuel Macron's comments on Islam. Daryl, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show as always.
Good morning, Inayet. It's wonderful to be back with you, my friend. How are you?
Very well, very well, thanks. And you, Daryl?
Well, a little early here, but it's we've had an interesting life over here with the lockdowns and everything, so things are difficult for the French right now.
Well, definitely. And also, I see the French president is not making it any easier. And we see his comments and most recent comments on Islamophobia having a boomerang effect. We're seeing world leaders, Muslim world leaders condemning. We see the likes of Turkey reacting. We've seen Pakistan reacting as well. And this is coming at a time when the world, Daryl, doesn't need this type of hate mongering that Emmanuel Macron is feuding at this point in time.
Well, he's trying to piggyback his opinions and get as much press as he can in the West. His target audience is certainly not the Islamic audience. It's more the British, the Germans, the Italians, and the Canadians, and so forth. And he's hoping that his stance, his position, will cause people to be more fearful of Islam rather than respecting it as a world religion. He wants them to be fearful of it, and he's trying to do that to the French public as well. And we can see that it's working to some degree. You watch the number of people that came out in support of this Charlie Hebdo. Teachers presenting that Charlie Hebdo front page, and then a lot of support came out for this, this position that Macron's taking. So domestically, it's not hurting him at all. But what he doesn't understand, what the French public don't understand, is that boycotting the French products is just going to make the French economy descend deeper into poverty. They've already done this earlier when they stopped all French exports to Russia. And now half of the farming community where I live is out of business because they used to export about 40% of their goods to the Russians. So they're destroying this country, but at the same time, they're also getting people to believe that all Islam is a dangerous religion. And this is, of course, we know that this is just a big lie trying to poison the minds of people who are ignorant, basically.
Exactly. But I think the key issue here is when one looks at the backlash at this point in time and looking at, the Turkish president, for instance, Erdogan, and, he questioned Macron's mental health. And we see Pakistan coming very, very strongly, even summoning the envoy as well. Now, Macron knew that he is going to get this reaction. And
well, he did, yes. He did, and the fact is, though, Erdogan has his own problems. This gentleman there is questionable at best. Some of his relationships and his calls against Israel are fraudulent. Basically, when you look under the surface, he's been helping the Israelis, especially when it came to medical treatment for a lot of these terrorists that have been operating in Syria and so forth. This guy is big trouble, and I have had no confidence in anything he's done over the years. And I think he's a danger to Turkey and surrounding countries. However, that doesn't change the fact that what they're trying to do is, in the minds of the believers in Islam, the Muslim community, they're trying to make it seem like it's you can't be proud to be a Muslim. This is what's happening in the West, and so essentially they're trying to soil the name, the good name of a world religion, and it seems to be working in many respects. And they're marginalizing communities throughout Europe, even in America. It's where there's not a large Muslim community, it's still being marginalized there, and you'll see a lot of hatred online, a lot of statements being made of hatred against Islam. They say it's this, it's that, and it's just painful for me to watch. However, the country I kind of respect the most for stepping up is Malaysia. They've also stepped up and said that this is unacceptable. Malaysia generally takes a very measured response to things that happen in the Islamic world. And when they come out and back angrily back something that's being done against Islam, it's generally a mainstream belief. And so I take a lot of solace in the fact that Malaysia has come out and said what it has said about this.
Yes, but also I think this whole view of Macron and looking at Greater Europe and what actually looking at the undercurrents in terms of what drives his foreign policy, and this is what his foreign policy is all about, where he seems to be increasingly convinced that Europe is in danger of being absorbed by Islam.
Well, that's been written about. I think he would like to do what these same controllers have already done to Christianity. What they did with the Catholic Church some years ago, we've talked about this in broadcasts, in previous broadcasts. They used pedophile priests and disgusting stories about priests abusing children to make people move away from their Christian beliefs, and it worked. The Catholic Church is in a huge decline. People's attendance to church has almost disappeared. The French almost never go to church any longer. They're not very believing even in God anymore here in France. They've been able successfully to destroy Christianity, and now they're turning their attention to Islam because it poses a threat to their control. When people will place their faith before their government, they get worried. And of course, they want people to be ashamed of their religion. And this is the attempt, I think, in the larger sense.
Exactly. And also, I think when one looks at Macron locally, and his approval ratings were quite low at some point in time. And, this again, when one looks at it domestically, create this fear of Islam, and at the same time, his own fears of not being re-elected. So these obviously are personally motivated, and that is why he's adopting these policies, Daryl.
I think that has an element to it as well, because the controllers would rather keep the same leader in place rather than have the public turn on him. However, the public absolutely despises this man. He's the least popular president, I think, in modern French history, and that's saying something, because all the previous presidents were pretty low on the popularity poll. However, what we see here, and we've talked about this as well, they set this up to be used in the future. When they set up the immigrant population from North Africa and set them into horrible environments, in other words, high-rise tenements with poverty, no jobs. I mean, you know that you're setting up this entire community to be demonized, because what happens to tens of thousands, millions of residents in poor areas who have no job prospects, and they live in tiny little apartment buildings that are clustered together, and you guaranteed to get a negative outcome. And this is exactly what's happened. And then they turn around and blame them for what they've had happen to them. In other words, they're blaming the people that are the victim for their own victimization. It's unbelievable, but this is what's happened. And they've done this in America to the Black community. And I look at it and say to myself, geez, this was by design. It had to be done by design, because no one could have been this stupid as to have done this without knowing this would happen. It seems to be pretty easy to see if you take a look at it.
Well, definitely. But I think the key issue here, again, you're speaking about the French economy and what COVID-19 has done. But yet, these world leaders or leaders like Macron don't take lessons from what they see happening in their own countries. And he's going to obviously have to suffer that fate, because we are reading about calls for boycotts, which is spreading right across the entire Muslim world right now. We've heard about even countries like Kuwait and Qatar and Jordan actually emptying their shelves with French products. So clearly, this is definitely going to impact very, very badly or negatively on France, its economy, and on Macron himself.
Well, you know that France's colonial past was throughout the Middle East and North Africa, and so if they are to really take, if you take a look at the economic effects that are going to take place as a result of this, it's certainly going to injure the bottom line here. And this is at a time when about 35 to 40% of the working public here have lost their positions, and they have no prospect of going back to work. So the state cannot pay for this, their unemployment. There's going to be hunger. There's going to be food shortages. There's going to be anger. There's going to be violence. It's going to get very dicey, very problematic here in Europe. Exactly when that is really going to start in earnest is difficult to say, but I'm guessing before Christmas. I'm guessing before the end of this year, we're going to see some serious issues socially here in Europe, and especially France. And it's not just happening in France. Again, Spain and Italy and Portugal, these countries are all in the basket as well. They're in big trouble. So it's going to be a very interesting period of human history this next few months here, Inayet. And I don't look forward to watching it happen around me, but I'm certain it's going to take place. One of the things that I guess you can maybe verify. I'm generally correct with the things I state, but not always correct with my timing. Well, this time I'm watching it, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see this happen in the very short and near future. We're going to have big problems in Europe, and I think globally. If you look at the entire global environment, this COVID farce is horrific, and what it's done to the economies of the world is actually shocking. You can't believe that the level of destruction that's taken place.
Well,
and so when you couple that with boycotts, with geopolitical anger, with people raising sabers and crossing swords here, we've got Erdogan backing, against the Armenians over in Azerbaijan, and we've got problems in northern Syria now with the Russians bombing the Turkish-backed troops, and this is just hotting up all over. And I'm wondering how much pressure this world's pressure cooker can take before it lets go. And it seems to be rather imminent. And I think the American election is going to really light it off. I'm wondering if that's the next stage.
Well, it certainly is going to be, but I think just coming back to this controversy, and when Macron says Islam is a religion that is in crisis all over the world, and he's basically touched the heart of each and every Muslim, Daryl. And I'm sure, when one looks at the question of blasphemy, it is an explosive issue. When we talk about caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, these are forbidden in Islam. And it comes at a time, Daryl, and I'm not too sure whether you know it, that we are in an Islamic month where both the birth and the death of the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, had occurred. So it's come at a very, very, I don't know whether this is just a coincidence, but at the end of the day, coming through, making these type of statements, attacking Islam, attacking the Prophet of Islam, clearly without having any understanding of what Islam really is.
Well, here's the thing. Freedom of speech, I think, is sacrosanct to the West. However, you have to use and exercise that freedom judiciously. And the first thing I'm going to say is publications like Charlie Hebdo have no place in a civil society when their sole goal is to insult and to denigrate. However, I'm not for banning anybody's opinion. So here's the problem that I've come across with this last problem that surfaced recently with this teacher. They were showing these images to young children, and I see that as child abuse. If an adult looks at something that has content in it that might be offensive, they have the experience possibly to judge it for what it really is and maybe say this is ridiculous and put it away, throw it away. But children are more impressionable. And I think a teacher that would do what he did to 12 and 13-year-old children is child abuse. And no one is bringing that up here, Inayet. No one is saying that this man is culpable and the school system is culpable for child abuse in this entire episode. And I find it to be incredible that they won't even bring that subject up.
Well, certainly. And I think the point that you made, that by publishing these cartoons, it's a willful provocation, knowing what reaction you're going to be getting.
Absolutely. That's pretty clear by this stage now. Now, the other thing that's happened as well is that the young man that they are blaming for the attack, he was actually working for a security company with his brother. He was training, and there's a lot of suspicious activity around his participation in this. In other words, him showing up at that school, his family, his friends said he had no connection to radical Islam or anything radical in his life. He was actually a rather kind of stable guy that was looking to be, to make a paycheck and work, had work prospects coming up, everything. And all of a sudden this happens, and it's starting to seem like he was probably sent there and became a patsy for this whole mess. That proof hasn't come out yet, but give it some time. I think enough people will investigate this to bring out more of the facts around his life. But already it's starting to seem like there's a setup that has happened here. And if that's the case, there was clear intent to make this all come out the way it has.
Well, Daryl, thank you very much for that. And obviously for dragging out early in the morning. We always appreciate your time with us here on Salam Media. We wish you all the best.
Thank you, Inayet. All right, my friend.
Daryl Bradford Smith joining us this morning on the ongoing Islamophobia in France. And this is definitely not going to go away. We've seen Imran Khan come out very, very strongly. In fact, some of the very strongly worded statements coming through from Imran Khan on this matter. And the key test is to see how the rest of the Muslim world reacts. And we know on the ground, we've heard about Kuwait and Jordan and all taking off French goods from the shelves. But these are people on the ground. But the key issue here is to looking at the world Muslim leadership, looking at the Arab League, looking at the Organization of Islamic Conferences, the world leadership in terms of how they are going to be reacting to these statements and to the Islamophobic attacks that have been carried out by the French president, and also the insult by giving an open license for cartoons, for caricatures of our beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That alone is striking it's like a dagger in the heart of each and every Muslim. And it's important for leadership right across the world, Muslim leadership, to show leadership at a time like this, where the person, where you're looking at Macron, looking at his own personal ambitions, looking at his own ratings domestically, and at the same time trying to make an impression right across entire Europe. So all of this personally motivated, but at the end of the day, let us see what happens, what reaction comes from the rest of the Muslim world. The time is just gone 9 a.m. And when we come back, we've got a lot more right until 10 a.m. on News and Views this morning.
I never thought before that he was for me the show, and he was the one that I love. Muhammad, 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 peace upon you, Muhammad. Peace be upon Habibi Muhammad. Peace be upon Muhammad. Peace be upon the messenger. Peace be upon the prophet. Darkness when Mecca.
Global perspective. This is Alongside.